filming this in my dressing gown. I could get changed, but I also did a 10-hour shift today, and I'm just kind of like, I don't want to put in effort. So that's that, everybody. Okay, books. Bookies. Okay, I actually really concerned myself. I shouldn't really be allowed out the house, not gonna lie. Right, who's excited? Everybody should be. Got quite a stack of books here. So normally I have like about 10 physical copies of books and then a couple like novellas that are on the Kindle. Most of my books this month are physical. I think I only have one novella. So I read 12 books this month. So 11 of those books are right here. Sneaky peeky time. Sneaky peeky time. This is my little... Oh god. Right. So... Books! Yeah! I'm gonna actually talk about books now. So, first book I read this month was My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is like a horror novel kind of thing. It's supposed to be like an ode to slasher films. No, right, okay. This is a trilogy. The third book comes out, I think, next January. And I already own the second book. The second book is called Don't Fear the Reaper. And I actually bought that book first because I didn't realize it was a series. And that book is just screaming my name. It sounds like such a good slasher book. Whereas this one didn't sound as good to me and I didn't really enjoy it. It felt very slow. Like, it's kind of a slasher. Our main gal is so obsessed with slasher films that when she thinks a slasher type horror is going on in her town, she wants it to be that. And I like kind of appreciate that for her. I admit I didn't enjoy it. I did. It's just like I only rated it 2.5 stars because I found it very slow and very, very wordy. A lot of it was just inner monologue. I did just find it very, very slow, and the ending didn't like do anything for me. But I'm excited to read the second book. The second book sort of cost me a bit more. So this was only 2.5 stars. I then finally read Beach Read by Emily Henry. So you best believe that the Emily Henry book reading vlog is on its way. It is on its way to a cinema near you. Probably not, because cinemas are crowded with Barbie and Oppenheimer, which they should be. So Beach Read by Emily Henry is a 5-star read from me. And honestly, I was surprised that it took me a while to get into this book. It was probably about page 100 that I actually really thoroughly got into it and wanted to keep reading. Like, the first 100 pages, I was kind of like, okay, it's a book. It's like, it's just a book, you know? But then I really started to get into it and I really fell in love with the characters. I think it's just once I fell in love with the characters, that was that. So this is about January and Gus, and they are kind of writing rivals, but then they decide to swap genres for for a book, so that they kind of get out of their writer's block kind of vibe, and you know, they end up bonding over it because they're trying to teach each other their genres, and I loved that. That was so cute. I did find this book really wholesome, and yeah, I did rate it 5 stars. I was trying to decide between 4.5 stars and 5, just because I was like, how is it 5 stars already? Oh my god. But 5 stars is what we're settling on for this bad boy. Loved it, and I can't wait to read it again and just like highlight all the banter, because Emily Henry, fucking iconic. Look at her go. Anyway, I then read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is my first ever Alice Feeney book. She wrote Rock, Paper, Scissors as well, and I know that's like a really popular book. This book was similar to Beach Read in the sense of like it was between a 4.5 and a 5 stars, and it also came out to be a 5-star read. It was just the ending of it had me a bit iffy. Like, it was a satisfying ending, but then I was like, is it a cop-out? I couldn't decide, because it was a similar kind of ending to The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, that kind of vibe, if you read that. But I did rate it a 5 stars in the end. Also, it has a floor plan in the beginning. It has a floor plan. I just love that. So it's about the Darker family, and they're all meeting up for the grandma's 80th birthday on this island that I've forgotten the name of. Seaglass Island. And it's the whole family, and you kind of get going from the point of view of Daisy Darker, and she kind of has a heart problem, which means that she's died several times in her life, and you kind of learn how all those happened. And then some people start dying. Like there's like a killer in the house actually, at this 80th birthday party overnight. And they're on an island that, you know, the tide's in and they can't get out, and it's just that kind of classic sort of trapped in the house novel whilst people are being picked off one by one. And I loved it. I found it so easy to read, like so easy to read. Like I didn't need to put any thought into this at all. It was just being sold to me. I loved it. I don't think I've ever read a thriller this fast. I read it in almost a day, which is, for me, is really quick. I then read Death Knocks Twice by Robert Thorogood. This is the third Death in Paradise novel in his little Death in Paradise series. So Death in Paradise is a BBC show, and it's written by Robert Thorogood, and he's written some novelized stories of it. So that's what these all are. There's 4 of them. This is the third one. I rated this 4 stars. I think I've rated all the books in this series 4 stars. One of them could have maybe been like a little bit higher or lower, but this was probably one of my favorites from the series. This is like one of the favorite mysteries. So basically it's about set in the Caribbean with D.I. Richard Poole, who's just an iconic detective, and 2 people are dead. It's just a classic whodunit. That's what these books are all like. They're cozy crime and they're all classic whodunits. 4 stars. Fabulous. I love Death in Paradise so much. Oh my god. This was such a great reading month. I'm not gonna lie. My average ratings was about 4 stars, just under maybe, and I think that's so good. Like the only one that drags it down is My Heart is a Chainsaw, which sounds really sad, but it's just the way it is. You know. Because then we read The Family Remains, and this, it was so close to being a 5 stars, so close. I rated it 4.5. It's by Lisa Jewell, and I wasn't sure how to feel going into this book. So this is a duology. The first book is The Family Upstairs, and I read that earlier in the year, and I wasn't sure about it. It took me ages to get into, and as much as I loved the story, I just couldn't. Just something about it just wasn't working for me. But this one did. This was so good. I like can't even stress how much I loved this book. It's about more. It's following on from the first book, obviously, but it's also it's telling its own story, which I really liked, but it's really adding on to that story. I feel like if you hadn't read the first book, you could read this one if you'd rather. I would definitely suggest reading the first book, but if you didn't, I don't think you'd miss out on too much, but it may not be as satisfying. This book might not be as satisfying if you hadn't read the first one. It almost felt like whenever it mentioned stuff happening in the first book, it was more like a reference to what happened in the first book rather than a continuation. That's kind of how it felt. But yeah, a bag of bones is found, and it's connected to the murder mystery that happened in the first book, basically, is the vibe of that book. So 4.5 stars. Honestly, part of me wants to just change that to 5 stars, but like. Then we read You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. So once again, obviously going to be in the Emily Henry video. This is also known as People We Meet on Vacation. That's, I believe, the American title of it. So it's about Alex and Poppy. And it's basically they meet every single year to go on a holiday. And one year, something's happened. 2 summers ago, something happened that made them stop talking to one another. And only recently, they've just gotten back in touch. They're going to have another summer together and try and sort themselves out. And I'm sorry, but the main gal in this book is one of like the most strange characters. And I mean, not to be that person, but like she reminded me of me. So like her banter was so funny. I don't know how to even describe the character of Poppy. She's so interesting and so okay, maybe she's not me, but she's like so confident in her own like kind of humor kind of thing, and I just really loved that. I just really liked it. Was kind of almost Grumpy Sunshine, but in a sense that the grumpy guy is more of like anxious confidence. That was kind of like the contrast that was going on in this book, where the guy was a bit more stressed and the girl was really laid back, which is usually the other way around. I then read the last book in the Chaos Walking trilogy, which is Monsters of Men, by Patrick Ness, and I followed this on with the novella Snowscape. So this was a solid 4 stars. I love this series. This series, I don't know what it is about it. It just makes me really happy, and it's really satisfying, the ending. This was like a good ending for it. It's mainly set in the war between the humans and the Spackle, which is the creatures of this planet, and it's kind of just going from there. Everything's kind of happening at once. There's a lot of action in this book, but if you read any of the other books in this series, it went perfectly with it. Nothing was abnormal, and it was just really nice. Snowscape, the little novella afterwards, is a nice wee novella. You don't have to read the novellas for the series. They were written 10 years later for the 10-year anniversary. I only rated Snowscape 3.5 stars, but I found it really interesting. Like, if you really love the world, I'd say that it's worth it reading them just to sort of add to the world, but it's nothing to do with the main trilogy story. It's just kind of expanding. Apart from the first novella, I'd recommend reading the first novella, but it's not like necessary. It's just something good for one of the characters' backstories. I then went on to read Blacklake Manor by Guy Morphus. This was a solid 4 stars, and it's a thriller. The killer can rewind time, so any time that our main heroine is trying to figure out something, she gets an answer, then time is rewound, and she doesn't know what she's found out anymore. So I found it a little bit hard to follow. You get a lot of lore in this, like much more than I was expecting, about the whole history behind the sort of turning back time thing. It was just, I don't quite know. I don't quite know. There was so much history to it. You get like you're following 2 timelines of the 1804 timeline and the 2045 timeline. So it's set a bit in the future. And, they're stuck at Blacklake Manor in a storm, kind of like Daisy Darker in that sense. I mean, it was really interesting though. You kind of learn a lot about these characters, but I didn't vibe with many of the characters. I found a lot of the characters really irritating. I don't think there was a single character that I actually liked, which probably says a lot. But the book itself is a really interesting book, and I've never read something quite like it. It felt kind of more like a literary fiction to me than a thriller, though. We then read Nothing More to Tell by Karen M. McManus. This book, it was a solid 3 stars. I did skim in the end. I find that Karen M. McManus books are maybe getting a bit repetitive for me. They're all sort of the same. So she wrote the One of Us is Lying trilogy, and The Cousins, You'll Be the Death of Me, and Two Can Keep a Secret. So this book is about a cold case of a teacher that died several years ago, and then our main character's just come back to that town and is kind of working for a true crime newspaper and sort of investigating the murder of her teacher. And that's the whole premise of the book. So that's kind of what's happening. Nothing about it really spoke to me. It was all a bit meh, I'd say. I really did skim the ending because I couldn't be bothered reading it, but I wanted to know who did it, basically. So I did only rate it a 3 stars. I think I'll continue to read her books, but I don't know how long I will do so, because I think they're just not working for me anymore, really. They're a bit, I don't really want to say too young, because I love reading young adult, so I wouldn't call them too young for me, but they're just not really my cup of tea, I don't think, anymore. They're just almost a bit too simple, a bit not obvious, but they just kind of feel plain, a little bit plain to me. That's what I'd say. Our penultimate book is Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. So this is a romance novel. I rated it 4 stars. And it's not quite what I expected. The premise of this book is that our main gal, Phoebe, she thinks that her new next door neighbor is a serial killer. So she's kind of keeping an eye on him, and then she gradually starts to fall in love with him. It does just at that about 100 pages in, she learns for certain whether he's a serial killer or not, and then it just turns into a love story. Basically, the whole serial killer aspect is kind of lost, and that just made me really sad, because that was part of the reason that I really wanted to read this book, is that there was like that serial killer aspect to it. And I'd love a story about falling in love with serial killers. Wouldn't that be great? Like properly. Which is ironic, because the next book is My Sister, the Serial Killer, by this author. And this is a really short little book. I rated it 3 stars. I don't really know why. So it's about this gal whose sister is a serial killer. She always seems to be killing her boyfriends in self-defense, and she starts to date our main character's sort of crush, and then she starts to panic about her crush being killed. But like, it felt like none of the characters felt consistent. Because as soon as the guy starts dating the sister, it's like he completely abandons her, and they like it completely abandons our main character, and is just doesn't care about her anymore when that's just not how he's been portrayed. So I didn't really like any of the characters. I loved the concept of it. That's probably why I got 3 stars. I might bump it down, to be honest with you, but it's a very short book, and the writing's massive, and the chapters are really short. So I can't really argue too much with that. And that's the last book I read this month. Whoa. Here they all are. Yeah. I love reading. Reading's so fun. Currently, I'm reading A Court of Silver Flames. That's the first book for this month, and I'm almost at the end. I'm not saying anything. I'm not giving anything away. Also, I just went on a book bag spree, so best believe we're getting a haul of that. I'm gonna get a haul. But anyway, so that was the 12 books that I read this month. I hope you guys have a great day. You know, you can like subscribe if you want to subscribe. That'd be like kind of cool, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be cool if we like had a subscriber party? I'll make the drinks. Anyway, bye!